Welcome to Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Ron Calderon. He is a member of the California State Senate. And so I want to speak with you about Cover California. It's California's exchange, healthcare exchange. The federal government allowed states to adopt their own exchanges. 14 states did, including California. I understand you actually played a role in the legislation to pass Cover California.
I did, actually. The exchange program had to be in the form of legislation,
right.
And I was the actual last deciding vote
really?
In that regard 4 or 5 years ago. So
and this was in the Schwarzenegger administration?
During the Schwarzenegger administration, yes.
Okay,
yes.
And it's interesting you mentioned that because Cover California, for advocates of the ACA, is seen as really a beacon of hope. There have been a lot of states, and
yes.
we know healthcare.gov has had its challenges, but the numbers for Cover California have been fairly strong. Well over 600,000 folks have registered through Cover California. Well over 500,000 have been deemed eligible for the Medicaid expansion. Let's talk about the good side. Why do you think California seems to be getting it right on the Affordable Care Act?
Well, again, Covered California is doing a very, very good job. We in our communities, all of us legislators, especially the Latino caucus,
right.
There's 26 or 27 of us that are working hard in our districts with workshops, with e-blast messages
right.
to our residents, and obviously on site at your service programs.
And let's talk about the Latino community, because you did mention the Latino caucus, and it's hard to deny that the Latino community has been a sore spot for those that are looking to see increased enrollment with Cover California. When we look at Spanish speakers that have enrolled through Cover California, the numbers really don't break 10%. When we look at the Latino community generally, the numbers may be around 20% for those that self-identify. But we know that the state is almost 30% Spanish dominant, and we know that those that could benefit from health insurance often are those from the Latino community. So the numbers aren't lining up.
Well, according to the LA Times, there's an estimated 1.2 million,
right.
Maybe 46% of the 2.6 million
right.
Californians on this federal premium subsidies. 18% so far, according to Cover California, are Latinos that have been enrolled. So the numbers are really, really disappointing. And again, the reason why we're involved.
But why is this happening? I mean, you've been elected in communities with large Latino numbers for decades.
We have been to symposiums with Cover
right.
California to learn ourselves and our
right.
staff. Let me tell you, the matrix that they present is complicated. And for us to explain, somehow, you lose something in the translation when you're trying to communicate in a different language. But it's very difficult to explain to people, when you qualify for a subsidy, when you don't, what your deadlines are. I mean, there's just different
and you
aspects.
mentioned the confusion. We also know, and Covered California has copped to this, that in the early months, there was no paper application in the Spanish language.
Right.
The number of navigators in any language
right.
was low, but in
right.
Spanish was also low. They're working to improve their performance on that front. So it was a bumpy start for those that are Spanish speakers.
Yeah, very bumpy.
And so are you hopeful that the numbers will start to improve? Because let's face it, in order for Cover California to work, in order for the Affordable Care Act to work, we need to have folks from all demographics, including and especially Latino community, and even and especially young Latinos.
Right.
And so what's your sense?
Well, I think we've dealt with most of the glitches. And, as I said, I have a large community, 263,000 uninsured residents. A lot of them are children who are citizens
right.
with undocumented parents.
And what they may not know, and you brought up an excellent point, is that the children of undocumented are eligible for the Affordable Care Act. And do your constituents realize also that even they could get subsidies through the Affordable Care Act, they could also be eligible for the Medicaid expansion, which California has accepted.
Whether they're working or
right.
not, there are many that qualify for subsidies. Some of them very much as $400 or $500 a month. Depends on their socioeconomic status, and what they make on their poverty level and so forth. But there's a deadline, March 31st. If we cannot get these people in my district, 263,000 enrolled, they're not going to qualify for the subsidies.
Right.
Then they're in trouble.
And they also would be subject to a penalty, a tax penalty.
Correct.
It's low in the first year. Some say too low. But look, at the final analysis, if one doesn't have health care insurance, who winds up paying when they get sick? We
do.
The voters and the constituents of the state of California.
That's right.
We talked about the undocumented briefly, and I want to continue that conversation because you have been an advocate for immigrants of all types. And I know recently you held a press conference. And at that press conference, you called upon the state to adopt a resolution, and you are speaking loud and clear on the question of the deportation of individuals that may be undocumented, but if the immigration reform package that passed the Senate becomes law, would be eligible for documentation. So you're basically saying, let's slow down.
Right.
Why did you decide to take that step, sir?
Well, let's look at the statistics. Okay, there's 10.3 million immigrants in California, and of those, 2.6 million are unauthorized,
undocumented,
as we say. Okay, 400,000 individuals are being deported annually, and every day 1,000 individuals are being separated from their families and being deported.
What's interesting about that, and we've discussed this in the past, is that folks may not realize that the deportation rate under the Obama administration is much greater than under the Bush administration. And so that's caused some real consternation amongst immigrant right advocates. They've been appreciative of President Obama's support for reform, but they've been frustrated by the increased rates of deportation.
Well, again, that's politics. Politics plays a role. As you know, the houses are not balanced, and in order for the president to get anything done, he's got to have agreement in both houses. So we're constantly going to have that battle, and all we can do is stress to Congress it's important that they resolve it.
So, as we speak today, I'm not persuaded that the House of Representatives will pass a comprehensive immigration reform package. I could be wrong, I'm just me. But there are attempts in states to try to effectuate positive or negative change as it relates to immigration reform. I don't mean to use those charged words, but some states are passing more draconian restrictions on the undocumented. California, a more progressive state, is looking to pass more progressive policies for the undocumented. One of your colleagues, I know, Ricardo Lara, has proposed that the undocumented be eligible for health care. We're back to health care, but can change be done at the state level?
Well, look, the Department of Homeland Security has the authority to stop deportation, to cease proceedings on deportation, to release people that are detained, and the executive power gives them that ability. The president Obama has the legal authority. He has a moral obligation to ensure that tomorrow's citizens are not suffering due to political inaction.
Those are strong words. But should folks in Sacramento, in the absence of federal action, try to take steps to improve the lives of the undocumented within our borders?
Right. Well, we're already doing what we can. Latino caucus priority. It's a priority, and our legislation is going in that direction. But we must do. Believe it or not, these resolutions are powerful.
Are they?
Yes, and in this particular case, this is the highest level resolution that's being sent to the president and to Congress. This resolution has been done on a citywide basis through LA County and other areas. But this is the first one of its kind on the level of
let's see
legislature.
what happens.
Yes.
His name is Ron Calderon, member of the California State Senate. When we come back, we're going to speak with Randy Muñoz. He's with the Latino Diabetes Association. Very interesting information there. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Randy Muñoz. He is with the Latino Diabetes Association. And sir, I'd like to speak with you about the scourge of diabetes generally in America and specifically with regard to Latinos. Give us a sense of how serious the diabetes crisis is in California, in America.
Well, in California, it's becoming not only an epidemic, but a pandemic around the world. But in Los Angeles County, where we have a bulk of our services, in LA County, let me just say this.
Please.
In LA County, there's about 650,000 diagnosed diabetics. Diagnosed.
Are we talking about type 2?
Type 2. Type 2 is really our focus,
right.
Although we do help people with type 1.
Type 1, of course, is juvenile,
yes.
And that is, it comes on at younger ages,
yes.
And usually it means that there's no function of the
very little function of insulin,
right.
Or production or distribution. So that means that they have to take insulin
right.
for the rest of their life.
Right.
But type 1 diabetes affects about 5% of all diabetic cases are type 1. The vast majority is, about 95%, is type 2, which is our focus. And in LA County, there's 650,000 diabetics that are diagnosed, and almost half, 300,000 of those are Latino. That's why we exist, because it's so pervasive.
And let's talk about the increase of diabetes diagnosis amongst the Latino community. It may not be clear, but maybe you can help us figure this out. Is it because of the diets of those in the Latino community? Is it genetics? Why is there an increase in diabetes amongst Latinos?
Well, that's a good question.
Please.
And it's both. It's really both. Now, obesity, and especially childhood obesity, is rampant, as we all know, which is a leading cause of the nutrition aspect of
right.
diabetes and lack of exercise. But also, there's genetics, and genetics you just cannot.
You can't fight genetics.
Right. You can't.
It is
sorry.
what it is.
It is what it is.
No, but here's the issue, though, Randy, is that with type 2 diabetes, steps can be taken to literally lose the diagnosis, yes. or at least control right. the disease. And that's what you are trying to do. You are trying to get the word out that steps can be taken.
Right.
You may not even know you have it, and if you have it, you can do something about it.
Right. And it's not all doom and gloom, okay? There is hope. But like I said, genetics and hereditary factors, your ethnicity is a right. huge factor. There's a lot of research, especially just recently, in the last few weeks, there was a lot of research done with USC and Mexican researchers that basically isolating diabetic gene
wow.
Within Latinos. African Americans and Asian right. groups have high rates as well. Believe it or not, also, diabetes is a huge epidemic in China and in India. Wow. And that surprises a lot of people.
Right.
In fact, 1 out of every 3 diabetics in the world are in China and
wow.
in India.
So you mentioned that about 650,000 people are diagnosed with diabetes.
In LA County.
But I bet you think that even more have it and don't know it.
Yes, that's the big problem.
And you are a big advocate of a diagnostic test.
Yes.
It's called?
Hemoglobin A1C. Let's just call it A1C.
Tell us all about it.
A1C is a very important test, and we're starting a big media campaign
right.
next month called Operation A1C. We want this really to be a household name. If you are diabetic or you're not diabetic, you're not sure, there's a big gray cloud over people's heads. They really don't know until they suffer a catastrophic
event.
Right. Event or complication like a heart attack or a stroke or blindness. It's the number 1 cause of blindness in the United States. You can use a glucometer and you can check your blood sugar, and it'll tell you if your blood sugar level are high or low. It's a snapshot of that moment in time. Understand? Depending on what you ate or you didn't eat, right. stress, medications you're taking, all that. The A1C, we call it the chismoso, because it kind of it's a gossip, right? It tells on you,
right.
because it tells you what your blood sugar levels are today, yesterday, last month. It goes back 90 days. So it's a very good panoramic view.
But you need just to take blood once for the A1C?
Or? One time. It's a lab test. You could only get it at your doctor. So
okay.
go to your doctor and get it. ask them, tell them, hey, I'm very concerned. It runs in my family, whether it does or doesn't. Tell them that, because you really got to push them. Really,
it's not a test that's usually given.
No, you have to ask for it. A1C. There's other tests that are just as good. There's glucose fasting test, tolerance test. They give you an orange pill. Okay, orange drink, nasty. Either way, just A1C. Tell them get the A1C. It's very, very important. If you are diabetic, you should get it every 6 months, 3 to 6 months. But it's a very good indicator, because without that A1C, it's like you're driving down the freeway blindfolded. You have no idea. You have no idea. You want to know what's lurking in your body, and so you could prevent this. We're all about prevention. We're not trying to find a cure, because if you prevent something, there's no need for a cure.
What can be done to prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes, or if you have been diagnosed, to try to lose that diagnosis?
Well, first off, we really advocate for testing, for early detection.
Fair enough.
Know what your risk factors are. And that is, obviously, if you're obese, if it runs in your family, if you're from one of those high-risk ethnic groups. Know what your risks are, get tested, and if you are, it's not a death sentence.
Of course not.
It's not a death. There's a lot of hope. So just good old-fashioned diet and exercise. That's the magic pill. There's really nothing.
So we know exercise. We know how to do that. When you say diet, can you be specific?
Yeah.
What exactly should we eat or not eat if we feel that we're at risk for type 2 or have been diagnosed with type 2?
Well, there's not a magic diet. Okay, stay
Fair.
away from those magic diets. It's just moderation on the side of health. But stay on a diet low on carbs and high in protein, high in green vegetables, green leafy vegetables, whole grains. I mean, all the normal
this
stuff.
This is what we hear.
Right.
Good fats.
All the fats and stuff.
Good fats, right.
But make an actual list of the foods that you really like, that are healthy, that you're actually going to eat. Make a list of the types of exercise that you actually like, whether that's actually physically going to the gym, or hiking, or salsa dancing, or any kind of dancing, swimming, walking, all that good stuff. Cardio stuff is the best type of exercise to get. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic, whatever works for you, that's what works.
And what's interesting, like you said, sure, if you're overweight, if you're Latino, like you suggested, it could be that you're at higher risk, but you could be slender and be walking around with type 2 diabetes.
Unfortunately, I was just talking to a friend of mine in Chicago the other day, and he's doing all the right things. He's slim, he's muscular, he's thin and everything, but he just cannot get his blood sugars down. He's about 300 routinely. That's very high. That's very high. You should be between 80 and 140, more or less, right?
Right.
And he's in his high 200s, 300s, and he just can't get it down. He's talking to the endocrinologist.
Now, I know that you're looking for folks to get involved. How can we get involved in the Latino Diabetes Association?
Well, we have several
several opportunities.
Several opportunities for volunteers to help us with our website, with social media.
The website address, lda.org.
LDA.org. And we really want people to call us at 323-837-9869. But we have several opportunities for people to volunteer and to help us out. And Brett, we're having we're going to have workshops in 6 different communities. That's basically the crux of what we do.
Yes, please.
Diabetes prevention workshops. And they're very comprehensive, and they're taught by certified diabetes educators. And they're very comprehensive in that they're for 6 weeks in 6 different communities.
Right.
And so
we can get involved in that way. We can donate if we'd like at LDA.org. I know recently you were the victim of a fraud. It was a well-documented case. A woman named
Kindy
Durkee, who embezzled from many politicians.
Yes.
But now you're a lead plaintiff thanks to the help of Senator Feinstein.
Yes.
And
she's
so
been helping us
that's been very helpful. So
Yes.
you must feel good about what you're doing.
I do, and I feel good that the tide is slowly changing, and people are getting more conscious of their diet. But we really want to press that A1C. Get tested, please.
His name is Randy Muñoz. He is with the Latino Diabetes Association. My name is Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Bob Bruesch. He is the president of the Garvey School District in the San Gabriel Valley. And so I want to speak with you about the local control funding formula known as LCFF. The formula is now in place. And what that means is school districts have tremendous discretion on how they can spend additional dollars, of course, being those districts that have a greater number of, let's call them disadvantaged children. And Garvey falls into that category. So what are you doing, sir?
Well, first of all, we're getting the parents involved because just like with every new education initiative, they see initials, LCFF.
Right.
You know?
Acronyms cause their eyes to glaze over.
I hate acronyms. It puts a lot more control in the hands of parents and teachers at local schools. LCFF is meant to help those kids who are struggling.
Right.
And that's
as well as English language learners who may be as intelligent as anyone, but they just don't know English.
But they're still struggling.
Right. They are, yes.
And it includes foster children who are still struggling. And what it does is give money to each school district in equivalence to the number of children that meet those standards, low income, English learners, and foster children.
But also, if a school district has a number in those categories of 55% of their population or more, there's another kicker.
Yes.
And so that can be quite significant. So that's a big chunk of change. But here's the question, sir. The regulations are very vague on how and where that money should be spent. So that begs the question, to where will you direct that money? Will it be to hire more teachers so class size can be reduced? Will it be for summer school? Will it be for new programs, after school programs, language programs? I mean, there's so many possibilities, new materials.
We'd like to say that it's going to be applied to magically transform all those kids into
how nice that would be.
Winning students, you know. But the legislation is written so that it really puts the onus on the school district of you can't use it for what you want. You have to ask your teachers and your parents what they want.
So have you spoken with them yet?
We are going through a process now of training both teachers and parents in what is needed to be part of what they call the LCAP. And it's another acronym that means a local control panel of teachers and parents. And I've been urging more creative teachers and more involved parents to become involved in this process.
But do you have a sense, even before the LCAP launches, where the priorities are for the teachers, for the students, for the parents of those students?
Yes, I do have a very clear picture. Our school district has reached that 800 level.
For the API score?
API scores, and everybody's cheering it, but those groups that we're talking about are still below, English learners and like that. What do we do to bring them up? Do we provide more teachers for them?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
Well, I'm the wrong person to ask because it's not going to be a program where parents get together and shake their head in a meeting, then rubber stamp.
I hear you, but at the same time, I presume as someone who is a teacher himself, who's lived in the community for decades, that you have some influence, and I don't mean that pejoratively, I just mean that what you say is valuable, but more importantly, you have a finger on the pulse of what people are thinking. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I agree. I think the whole climate of a school and a school district has to change because the key word in this whole argument or this whole discussion is collaboration. And collaboration, you have to define what you mean by that. And I mean that as a community, teachers, parents, administration have to collaborate, have to really get down to discussion and not use acronyms, but use hard information and come up with, this is the method we're going to use in this particular school to meet the needs of these particular children.
But again, these children, while they're lumped together in one category, to me they seem disparate. Again, just because someone's an English language learner doesn't necessarily mean that they are challenged academically. And just because someone comes from a disadvantaged home doesn't mean they're challenged academically, and likewise with foster kids. You know, I just get the sense that these three categories are lumped together into they're struggling, but they're such different kids.
And we've got to learn from the success stories of those children. If we have kids that are in that, those three categories that are excelling, we want those parents on that committee.
Right.
We want those parents to tell us what is being done.
But I don't mean to keep pushing you, but I'm going to keep pushing you. What's the buzz? I mean, what's the early buzz? Do they want smaller classes? Do they want after-school programs? Do they want new materials? Do they want summer school? Okay. Or is it just not there yet? If there's no answer, I hear you.
I have a clear idea.
Yeah.
One thing is after-school tutoring doesn't work.
Doesn't?
No.
Why?
No. Because programs that are contracted with the state are told that they have to provide individual children with tutoring, and they must show progress. But they don't demand that the progress be on the state test. They can show progress by giving them a test that they devise themselves,
okay,
which may not or may correlate with the state test. So that
is not that.
No.
So what is it? If you know yet.
If I was the governor,
right?
And
if you were to predict what the LCAP would say,
yeah, this is what I would say. We would ask teachers to be designing lessons that are more individualized. Huh. And the reason I say that is because the new Common Core standards,
right? Oh yes,
basically over on top of this, demand that teachers do that. And we have to give the teachers freedom to design those type of lessons where kids are entirely engaged within the whole community of learning.
But it would seem to me, if that is to be the case, you do need smaller class size. I mean, to do an individualized lesson for 40 kids would be impossible.
Could be so.
20 kids, 25 kids, maybe.
But let's look at what was being talked about in the news over the last 3 days. Mm-hmm. What about 0 to 3? What about 0 to 4?
Well, we can talk about, I mean, this is being talked about, you know, over the last few months. Yeah. And we know that the leadership in the Assembly and in the Senate have been pushing for universal pre-K. The governor recently held his State of the Address, did not mention universal pre-K. So that begs the question, as you suggest.
But could we use LCFF for universal pre-K? We don't know.
It would presumably swoop in non-targeted students, and is that permissible?
No, but we could have programs that are targeted. You know, let's face it, a child learns based on what their experiences are, and those experiences start in the womb.
Oh, no doubt.
And if a child comes to school at age 5, and has had 5 years of stimulation in terms of input, and a child comes to school at age 5 and has none of that stimulation, the child who has the input, the stimulation, is 2 years ahead already.
It's that quick.
That quick. Wow. In the first 5 years.
You can tell.
You can tell. Studies have shown this. So what I'm hoping is that at least some of our schools try to do that transition between home and school, the 3 and 4 year olds, so that they get that nudge and that input.
No, I got it. Yeah, you're being clear. I wonder if one school district can do that under LCFF. I mean, you asked that question. Would that be a permissible use of funds?
We'll have to find out.
We'll have to find out, no doubt. His name is Bob Bruesch, and he is the president of the Garvey School District in the San Gabriel Valley. My name is Brad Pomerance. I want to thank you all so much for watching Charter California Edition.